Hello everyone. Hi, this is me waving. I am Max Grinnell and I teach urban design and related matters at Mass Art. And here we are in a revitalized Faneuil Hall. I'm excited for a variety of reasons. I'm excited because people are back in Boston. People are out. People are living life. So it's an exciting time. We're so glad you're all here. So once again, I am Max Grinnell. I teach in a summer class called Transforming Boston. And I'm here to show you a little bit about the Blackstone Block, talk a little bit about the history of Faneuil Hall Marketplace, and so on and so forth. And I will be taking a look in the chat and answering questions. So good evening, everyone. What a beautiful Wednesday we have. So, I'm going to turn around and show you what we're listening to. So, one of the things I think that distinguishes any big city, in Boston is included in that, is live performances. And that's something that's been reoccurring throughout the city as things continue to change. There's a group of men who are mostly from Dorchester and Mattapan City, who I've seen, or I haven't seen in months, but they're out here entertaining locals, tourists, visitors. And if you think of that kind of zesty experience in cities, live music, kind of interacting with other people, it's really exciting to see folks out here. These gentlemen have a great rapport with the local audience, so it's really wonderful. And of course, in the distance, we have Faneuil Hall, and further in the distance, we have Quincy Market. Probably some of you have been to Quincy Market. It is what we call in the urban design business a festival marketplace, a historic building that has been repurposed for different uses. So, probably some of you have been there before, experienced it. I like this quote, and when we do meet our classes in person, which the summer's class is an online class, maybe an optional field trip, I like to take folks down here and read this quote by Kevin White, who is mayor of Boston. And it reads, "Boston is truly where it all began. Join me in continuing this bold endeavor so that future generations can say, this is where the promise was fulfilled." And that is Kevin White's inaugural address. I don't want to compete with these awesome gentlemen over here interacting with tourists. So it's great to see these guys back again. And maybe some of you will say in the chat, what do you like best about Boston? What do you like best about cities? I haven't seen this many people here in a long time. And hello, here we have a bronze statue of Kevin White. Hello, Kevin White. And that is former mayor of Boston, Kevin White. We're going to head on over into the Blackstone Block. You can see kind of, it certainly was the case when I did this tour last year. Most people are not wearing masks, not required anymore in the state of Massachusetts and in other states. Oh, we have the Freedom Trail. Hello, Freedom Trail. Hi, Freedom Trail. We'll talk about you in a minute. Some of you are like, Freedom Trail? What's the deal with that? So we are crossing the street. And a lot of things have returned in the last year. We got some skateboarders over here by the dueling sculptures of James Michael Curley. Not Boston's first Irish mayor, but certainly one of its most well-known. He was the mayor of the people, he was called. Hey, I like walking in Boston, the history, gardens, and museums. Me too. And also, we want to encourage you, everyone is welcome to take my class, Transforming Boston at Mass Art. The history, oh my goodness. Thank you, Lucy Hill. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, so we got folks out here just enjoying. You know, the thing I always tell students about cities is there are all these unexpected uses. You know, you think the folks who designed these parks said someday we'll have folks out here skateboarding? Probably not. But here they are, making great use of the street. Which brings me to the story of Union Street. So one of the things, as someone who spent a lot of my professional career in other places, Chicago, Seattle, etc., is the closure of streets. And this is kind of, I think, exciting for Boston, creating opportunities for like these folks out here skateboarding, people eating outside, which, as some of you know, could be hard to do in Boston. And it's really a great way for kind of local institutions like restaurants to thrive. So We're heading into the Blackstone Block. Some of you may have heard this name before. William Blackstone was generally considered one of the first permanent European settlers in Boston. He built a house on what is now Boston Common. So the block is named in part after him. And you can see it's a collection of older buildings. One of the things folks notice when I take my students over there, like across the street you have City Hall, which is an urban renewal project. You know, at one point in time you had a massive freeway that went right up to the Blackstone Block. And people always say, how did this ever happen? How did this beautiful selection of wonderful older buildings survive? And it's kind of interesting because people thought at one point they would be demolished for more parking. Let me move by some of the tables. Move, so you can see a little bit more of the block. And we'll go in some of the alleys. Oh, thank you, Mr. Brond. Yeah, outdoor dining areas. Thank you, Lucy. And I think that's one of the big changes we've seen in cities, and something we've talked about in my classes as we've met online over the last year, is how do we repurpose space so that more people can use them, right? People like to eat outside. Those of you who visit other cities in the world, whether it's Casablanca or Paris or, I don't know, Florida, you've probably seen more people doing things outdoors. And I always tell people, New Englanders are a hardy bunch, so I always feel like that's something that they can embrace. And I certainly have dined out myself with friends during all of this. The Blackstone Block is also interesting. Has things like the Yankee publishing building. If you think about how older buildings work, maybe in your hometowns, whether you're from Newton, Massachusetts, or Longmeadow, Massachusetts, or maybe we have folks joining us from all over the world. Old buildings are these great incubators for businesses, right? Not every business, whether it's a restaurant, artist studio, needs, a brand new building. Some of these buildings can be repurposed over time. So, and there you have folks eating outside in front of Ye Old Union Oyster House. Maybe we have some folks with us today who've been to Ye Old Union Oyster House. And we'll come back over to the Oyster House in a minute. I want to show you probably one of my favorite pieces of public art. I'm always moved by it in a different way. And it's by the designer Stanley Seidowitz. It's the New England Holocaust Memorial. And it's a really tremendous piece of public art, and one that I'm always moved by in a different way. We just had a question, didn't the Haymarket used to be around there? Yes! We're going to show you where the Haymarket would be over the weekend. We'll come to that in a moment. So, the New England Holocaust Memorial is now 26 years old. It's a place where people come to kind of think about history, the Holocaust, kind of the human experience. And, people always have different reactions to the piece, which I think is how good public art works. We probably have some folks who've joined us. Also, I invite all of you to think about, maybe there's a piece of public art, sculpture you love. Toss that into the chat. And the thing is, I think this is one of my favorite things about cities, is you have these interesting juxtapositions. So no matter how you think, maybe kind of about how we memorialize events like the Holocaust, here you have this kind of somber place, I will say, right next to bars and restaurants, and kind of it's kind of a pretty involved atmosphere. But interesting story behind why the Holocaust Memorial is here is the folks who worked on the memorial wanted it to be in a central location. So they really valued having it to be a place where folks could come and visit. And certainly one of the things that I think people have found interesting here is the ability to kind of be close to lots of other things. And we will talk about the Haymarket. We're just taking a quick look on the other side of the Valentine Tavern, which claims to be Boston's oldest tavern. I think sometimes they may forget about a little thing called Prohibition. But you can see the cool thing, I think, about the Blackstone Block, and when I bring students down here for my urban design and studies classes, is that it's the oldest remaining street grid in the city of Boston, kind of the street layout. And it's from the mid-17th century. Now, most of these buildings are not that old, but there's certainly a lot of history within these buildings. And we're going to walk into the block. As I mentioned before, we're walking by the Union Oyster House. And I think we'll pause to talk a little bit about the Freedom Trail. So the Freedom Trail, when I talk to my students, some of them always think, well, Massachusetts state history, we came down here, we walked the old state house, etc. But the thing I always think is fascinating about the Freedom Trail is that this, is that this really remarkable place actually started, or this idea started because of a newspaper column from the Boston Herald American, or Boston Traveler. And this journalist said, this is after World War II, people are starting to leave big cities, Boston included. And he said, I really want people to find their way to these spaces. Old North Church, King's Chapel. And so they literally just 3 months after the column appeared, they took out paint, they painted a red line, and created the first part of the Freedom Trail. And it included a number of sites. In the 1970s, they added the sites in Charlestown, USS Constitution, Old Ironsides, and all that jazz. So the Freedom Trail is pretty neat. And there you have it. Look at me. I'm on the Freedom Trail. That's me waving. I was supposed to be waving at you, but I guess I'm just waving at my feet. So as we make our way through the Blackstone Block, which I really think is kind of one of this really amazing way to think about Boston's history and how some things in Boston don't change as much. There you have the Valentine Tavern reminding us they're America's oldest tavern, except for Prohibition. Oh, there's a car. What's this car doing in the middle of here? Interesting story about this particular building. This is the Ebenezer Hancock house. Some of you might be saying to yourself, Ebenezer Hancock? Is that like the less famous Hancock? And you'd be right. Ebenezer Hancock was John Hancock's brother. There we have, that's my cheat sheet. I'm pretty good, everybody, but I'm not perfect. So he had a pretty important job. Ebenezer Hancock was the paymaster general of the Continental Army. So once upon a time, by a lawyer's office, it was where you kept all the payroll for the people serving in the American forces. Question from Jamie. Yes, the Freedom Trail marks points important to the American Revolution. Sites like the Old South Church, King's Chapel, etc. And if you quick Google search of Freedom Trail will give you a map along with some other details. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us again. Got a few more stops on our tour. The first stop I'll tell folks is the Boston Public Market, which is in this elaborate building. The Boston Public Market contains 36 different vendors, local produce, they have seafood, so on and so forth. And they are closed now, but they will soon be reopening to be open 7 days a week. So a quick little note about this space. This is usually where the Haymarket meets. The Haymarket is Boston's oldest continuously operated outdoor market. During the pandemic, it closed for approximately 2 weekends. So while everything was locked shut, completely down, bars, you name it, the Haymarket abided. There's now a fancy hotel going up next to the Haymarket. Oh, and one more thing. One of these beautiful installations that celebrates the local Haymarket, which has been on this site for almost 300 years. You got some banana peel sculptures. You got some little bit of everything. Oh, thank you for saying boo. I love that. Kind of scared me right there. I love it. You got little signs of the market, right? Even when the market isn't here, you can be like, oh, hello. We got some Boston Bib lettuce. We got, maybe that's from a 6-pack of soda. Yeah, this is really kind of one of my favorite sites. And now we are going to walk over. You see the north end in the distance. That is the historically Italian-American neighborhood, but that of course has changed due to gentrification, which is brought up by one sage observer already. Thank you, Lucy. Now we're going to cross over into the Greenway. We're going to be careful here, and we'll talk a little bit about the Greenway before our time runs out. The Greenway was named for Rose F. Kennedy, who was President John Fitzgerald Kennedy's mother. She loved gardens, she loved green spaces. So once upon a time, everything you're looking at right here in the distance used to be the central artery, which is an elevated freeway. People used to call it the other green monster, referencing Fenway Park's wall. And they also said it was Boston's largest parking lot. That's not a compliment. I'm one of these people that feels like we should do more to encourage pedestrianism, bicycling, and public transit. Here's a little map of the Kennedy Greenway. You can see that. You can see some of the details. You can see the thing that says, "We are here." Hey, that's us. We just walked through we saw the Holocaust Memorial, we saw the Blackstone Block, and that's where someone's rubbed off our location. So before we go or depart, I'll show you a little bit about what you can find on the Rose F. Kennedy Greenway. We got some outside yoga. The water droplets indicate water features. Great question. Those are the water features. You can see a couple kids out here enjoying this. So I think we would all say that having this beautiful greenway, which extends for 1.7 miles from the North Station, which is the train station, all the way to Chinatown, is a vast improvement. My friends, I am so glad you came to join me. Please remember, I have a class called Transforming Boston. It's all online, so whether you're in, I don't know, Boston or Bahrain, you can come take my class this summer. I'm Max Grinnell. If you are interested, you can find me Twitter at The Urbanologist, and you can also email me at mgrinnell@massart.edu. Thank you so much for your kind words. Be well, stay safe, and have a great summer. Take care, everybody.